on?
Yes.
Laura, is the minister there? Hello, minister.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, and now we can see you, minister. Great to have you with us.
Okay, no problem at all. I actually thought I had come onto it there earlier on, but it's obviously whatever the technology is, it didn't click until I clicked on mute. So you have me anyway now.
Great, thank you, minister. Great to see you. And some of our honorary consuls you've met before, of course. Calling them honorary consuls doesn't quite catch it because it's not just an honorary job, as you know. It actually involves quite a bit of work, a little bit of stress sometimes, but I know they greatly honor it, you know. And for our honorary consuls, Minister Brophy is Minister for the Diaspora, also Minister for Overseas Development Assistance. Because of COVID, of course, all his traveling is done from his desk. We were joking the other day in a meeting with the Small Island Nations that he's probably the minister with the lowest carbon footprint of all his predecessors, and I know he wants to remit that at the first opportunity. He represents Dublin Southwest, my own constituency, in and around Rathfarnham and environs, and he's been minister now since June, July of last year. I know Canada is very close to your heart. And this is a great opportunity for you to give us some news from Ireland and get some news here, the perspective of our honorary consuls. So yeah, looking forward to a nice chat, and over to you, Minister.
Well, thank you very much, Ambassador. It's great to have the opportunity to have the chat. I'm really looking forward to it today. It is, yes, it is one of, I think I have got to say, one of the strangest experiences to be a minister for the diaspora and for overseas development aid, and to be in the job months and months and months and never having left the country. You are looking, as you see on this picture, where I do all my traveling. So I sit in this magical chair. Somebody turns on a camera in front of me, one of about 2 different cameras. For some reason, there has to be 2 different cameras, don't ask. I then have to figure out which button unmutes the microphone, and using that technology, I have talked to the world and so many people, some of your good selves before and others right around the world, and it has been really an amazing way to get to know people. But I am absolutely looking forward to getting to try and meet people in person, obviously to get an opportunity to go to Canada, to have an opportunity to actually physically meet and see some of the things that we've talked about and the people I've had endless video conference calls with at this stage. So today, obviously, it's lovely to have this chat. I'm fully aware, obviously, that it's a time of crisis for everybody in terms of COVID and the impact that COVID has had on communities and on people's work, both on our embassy and our consulate and on our honorary consul as your work as working, but also on the amazing community groups and organizations right across Canada who have responded in so many ways to the challenges of working and dealing with COVID. And I think hopefully we'll have a chance to talk about that more during the call today. But just to particularly acknowledge all the staff in the embassy, the consulate, and all of your good selves and all of those people for that work that's been done. We've seen, and I've heard firsthand from so many people about the program switches that took place, the setting up of online, of coming together of different groups in umbrella organizations. Always interesting to hear even things like that cross-generational thing where you have maybe lads in a GAA team who would have been training and playing for games and whatever, and all of a sudden are getting involved with the community group, which is helping the elderly and which is working with a different generation of Irish people, and the way in which all of the groups have really come together. So from our point of view here, obviously, we're going to continue to support that effort. That's absolutely critical, we think, in the year ahead and probably in the years ahead. It's going to be important to prioritize some funding and make sure that that is there. I think that there will be an amazing opportunity to strengthen online delivery of services, to take out of, I always say that one of the things that COVID has brought about is probably the transformation of maybe 5 to 7 years into 5 to 7 months. in terms of how things will be done. So this use of technology that we are now so familiar with and literally spend our life doing, I think even when we get the opportunity to go back to in-person meeting, I think we'll find that it'll be much more blended and it'll be much more a mix of online delivery and supports. And I think that'll be the case not just for ourselves, but I think also for the voluntary organizations and community groups, and even down to people running festivals and events right throughout Canada and right throughout here back home. You know, that type of mix of virtual and real will become the norm. So it's, as I say, I'm more interested in chatting than talking to. So I want to open it up to hear your thoughts and views and everything. So I suppose the handiest thing is to ask people maybe just to do a hello and an introduction. I obviously know one person particularly well in Frank, who's there, I gather. That's the hi, Frank, and you can update me on the greater family situation. But I have a few faces I can see on screen, but maybe if we want to do a run through and just give everyone a chance to say hello and kick it off then.
Right, maybe we'll start from the east and move west. Maybe we'll start, Mark, with you from Newfoundland. How are you coping up there?
Hello,
you've had a bubble. You've managed to do it very well.
Well, we were doing very well. COVID largely spared us after our first wave, and we were in the low single-digit case counts for months, and life had returned almost to normal. Certain industries, particularly tourism and hospitality, were still hit fairly hard. Others, our tech sectors, actually flourished in these difficult times. But now we've had another outbreak. We're in level 5 lockdown, and it's just a wait and see now as we try to wrestle it back under control.
It's a very interesting thing to see that similarity of experience, because you know, we had a version of that here as well, where we had that drop and we had that feeling from people that, you know, something has moved on and it's changed and we can have a little bit of normality coming back, and then to have to go back to level 5 and go back to that experience of that almost complete shutdown, it's had, I think, a sapping effect on the mentality of people to deal with it. I mean, the type of vaccine rollout is about the only thing that's keeping people together in terms of that. But, you know, that spirit that was there last March is not the same definitely now, as people are still dealing with it and saying, well, thankfully here we're getting our numbers way back down again. But it is a very difficult thing to go from a you know, feeling that you've done so well straight back to a level 5. I could fully empathize with that type of experience.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. People are finding it more difficult this time.
And has that manifested itself, Mark, in terms of mental health issues and that, or how's that impact been?
Well, like a lot of jurisdictions, the reporting is not really capturing what a lot of the volunteer organizations are stating. So we have health and mental health issues which have been very seriously negatively impacted by the outbreak and the required lockdowns. So it's been tough. And, you know, our arts sector, as I mentioned before, our tourism and our hospitality sector, they're all really feeling pain of this. And those are the sectors that people rely upon. You know, you could go out and to see a concert, to go have a meal, go to the pub. Those are the type of coming together which build a community and strengthen people's mental health. So it's people are pulling together, they're looking after each other, but we're all looking for the jab in the arm.
Thanks, Mark. Brian, you're in the same neck of the woods, as it were, and I assume a lot of different issues there. Do you want to just give a pen portrait to the minister about how you've been coping over there in Halifax and Nova Scotia generally?
Yeah, well, very nice to meet you, Minister, and thanks for joining with us for the conversation. We've been very lucky here in Nova Scotia. I mean, with the exception of the first 3 months of uncertainty with COVID, we've been fairly open for the most part, right through it all. And of course, like with Mark in Newfoundland and people in PEI in New Brunswick, last summer we had the Atlantic bubble, which provided us really with a little bit of tourism from the other provinces. So we didn't have a bad summer at all, you know, and we're very optimistic now that the vaccines are rolling out, that this summer will, you know, pick up and people's confidence will return. I'm involved, unfortunately, in 2 of the industries that have been devastated by COVID, the food and beverage industry and the music industry. And it has been a hard slog, and, you know, the government have been, you know, pretty good at helping us out with that. And the diaspora here have, you know, I think fared fairly well. I mean, I've not had any serious cases where people having problems throughout this. 1 or 2 people wanting to get back to Ireland for a holiday more than out of necessity. Other than that, it's been smooth sailing.
Yeah, it's a strange situation, particularly the divergent impacts on different business areas, because you know, we've had it here as well, and it's interesting to hear you you know, mentioning it there. If you're in now those key areas of either hospitality, food and bev, if you're in the music side of it, if you're in anything like that, the real impacts have been, you know, depending on how effective you've been. But if you're in a lockdown situation, it's catastrophic. And yet, in terms of other sectors, in terms of high-end tech and in terms of financial services and in terms of whatever, you know, not only have innovative means of working from home and remote working being used, but in actual fact, you know, you've had some real benefits and people have seen. So it's very, and one of the things, of course, that's, I think that is an impact, you know, I would imagine on our diaspora in Canada particularly, is that a lot of Irish people would have gone out, would have worked in those sectors that are most affected. They would have worked in hospitality, they would have worked in the bars, they would have worked in the restaurants. So you've seen that direct impact on them, and you know, anybody in there who's losing their job, and that worrying thing. We've seen it very clearly here at home, whereby, you know, you've thousands and thousands of younger people who, not just the people who earned their full-time living out of it, but also people have almost forgotten, but the tens and tens of thousands of students who supported themselves through their college year or through the thing by the work in the summer and by the temporary job down in the bar and everything else. And all of that is gone, and it has had a major impact. And I mean, I'd be interested to hear from you there what you think your reopening like would be in terms of a timeline. Certainly where the feeling now, say here back in Ireland, is that even with the vaccination program working to, and hopefully will work to a timeline depending on deliveries, that there still will have to be restrictions through this summer in terms of not reaching enough critical mass by the summertime, maybe by September, October, but certainly not by June, July, August, and that then will have an impact on our hospitality sector. Is that something similar that you reckon in terms of your experience?
Yeah, and the provincial government here reckon everyone will be vaccinated by June, so there's great optimism. They're talking now this week about reopening the Atlantic bubble again, and so that's all very positive for our industry here. Yeah.
Oh, it is. No, that is a more positive situation than possibly we're facing ourselves. But you know, we'll keep working on it. So, but I hope your timeline holds for you. That would be good to hear.
Fingers crossed. Yeah.
Fingers crossed.
We'll move across now to Ethna in Toronto, and you know, we're both in Ontario, of course, and there's uncertainty about vaccination programs and so on. But Toronto got hit pretty hard. Ethna, you might just want to give a sense of that to the Minister.
Certainly, Ambassador. Minister, lovely to see you again. And I think you may have gotten the impression the last time we talked, I'm very passionate about the Irish community in Toronto. So let me get that off first of all. Yeah, obviously we're still in lockdown big time. We had a little respite during the summertime, but we're totally back in lockdown again. I suppose, fortunately, all of our organizations, we have about 26 Irish organizations here, all came together initially a year ago to see how, you know, what would be needed and how we could best help. And the main concern were the young Irish kids who are here. They've come in droves since the 80s, and many of them had arrived just a short time prior to the pandemic. Those and our seniors, so mental health issues and financial issues we were mainly concerned with. The young people responded right away, and we have spent over $120,000 on food vouchers. We've used the St. Vincent de Paul model of kids apply, I talk to them to find out what their needs are, how best we can help them, and then we send them out food vouchers. So we've been doing this on a weekly basis for many of them now for a year. As I think Mark said, the hospitality business has been hit really, really badly here. Many of our Irish kids obviously work in that business. Construction on and off has been an issue. We had one young Irish doctor. We have kids with master's degrees who are struggling to find jobs. So it's been a very rewarding experience, Minister. And one thing I really need to say is the fact that the Irish government reached out to us here in Toronto, and I know to the diaspora generally, to be able to tell the kids that they were being supported by the Irish government was really meaningful for them. And I think it meant also they didn't feel so badly about reaching out for help. So, you know, a huge thank you to the government for that. Obviously, we had to reach out to the Irish organisations, and it's been overwhelming. I mean, so many people came here, understand what it's like to arrive new in a country and then for a pandemic to hit. Many of these kids hadn't built up enough hours of work to be able to enable them to get the CERB or the government subsidy. So in fact, they actually had nothing to live on. Some of them went home, some of them for one reason or another were not in that position. So it's been a great journey. It's been a tough journey for a lot of people. Many of them have gone back to work, thankfully. Hospitality business, unfortunately not, and it looks like it'll be another while. And just while I'm on a little roll here, just to tell you about our seniors, again, concerned about the mental health issues and isolation. So we have 30 Sunshine volunteers who've been baking up a storm, and at Christmas time bringing poinsettias and baked goodies and chocolates and Ireland of the Welcomes, and again for Valentine's Day, and a little outreach for St. Patrick's Day with the mask and a card and some badges that they're going out in the mail, and then we'll do another one for Easter. But just to go back to the kids for a minute, we've been working very closely with the Eamon O'Loughlin Immigration Centre, and they have been amazing, particularly with the mental health issues as well. So a shout out to them. And just one young man said to me last week, and he's been with us for a long time, he said, you know, without this group, I would have been hungry very often in the last year. So I think feeding people is fairly basic, and that's what we've tried to do.
Well, listen, thank you very much. Just to absolutely reassure you, I love people being passionate about the things they believe in and the things they're working on. I'd be disappointed if they weren't, and I look forward to you continuing to have that passion. Absolutely, 100%. So
thank you.
It is here, though. You're quite right, and I know you said it to me in our previous engagement as well. That impact on so many young people was really, I think it's very difficult to grasp for everybody at every age, but I think it's very difficult to grasp for young people who are starting off in life, hoping to do something that's going to be a great, novel, new, experiencing part of that whole thing you dream about when you're the other side of college or whatever, and getting out, you know, just out in the world on your own, and literally to arrive in a different country and within weeks or months or whatever, to have that turned on its head. And I don't think until we are maybe a little bit past this that we'll be able to properly evaluate the actual, particularly the mental health side implications of the stresses and strains that people went through. I think it'll have a much longer play out than people necessarily expect, because the initial thing was that people thought of COVID in terms of a type of, you know, a 3-month or a 4-month thing, you know, and sure, listen, we'll get over this, and by the summer everything will be grand. And as the dawning and the realization came, I think, to everybody, you know, in every country, that this was going to last, and that there was going to be not just months, but possibly years of it, and there was going to be uncertainty, the pressures that brought on the mental health side of people's lives really began to think. And I think you can actually see that in interactions all the time, whether it's here in Ireland or whether it's people I'm talking to in different parts of the world. You can actually see that pressure and strain of the uncertainty of not knowing, of wondering, of hoping, and and obviously there's endless media coverage and reporting. It's all anybody talks about in any country, possibly with the exception of the fact that Meghan and Harry managed to get through, where no other story has got through in the last year. Otherwise, it's been an endless diet of COVID, and that in itself feeds on that worry and feeds on those things. So that support is so vitally needed for younger people and also for our older community. I don't know how they say the vaccine program is going for. I'd be interested to hear from you now on how it's going for senior citizens. But I can tell you from my own perspective, my mother told me, who's 86 years of age, that one of the most joyous days in her entire life was the day she went down to this big outdoor marquee tent set up outside the doctor's surgery, and they brought in the people in the first batch. She was in the first batch of 10, and they got their first part of the vaccine, the first dose of the vaccine. And when they all arrived out, all the people family members who brought them down for the vaccine, all applauded and clapped and everything else. And it was just one of those magic things. So, those are the little things, those little helps and supports being there for people that are so really crucial. And I know that that's what you're doing. So it really is great.
Thank you.
Yeah. Ethna, just on that question, how's the vaccination program for the senior citizens and particularly with senior in the Irish community? Is the vaccine kind of coming soon to them?
We're not absolutely certain, Eamon. All the people in the residences, in the seniors' residence, they've all been vaccinated. They're starting with the 85 plus, and that's kind of rolling out fairly slowly. With the AstraZeneca one coming, they are trying to vaccinate the 61 to 65-year-olds. So it's a little bit confusing. Hopefully, we're all hoping that by summertime that all of us will be vaccinated. Not sure, the message seems to change from day to day, seems to me.
Yeah, I think we're in very similar position. We're depending on production lines from factories, and we're at the whim of that. So, but I'm a bit of an optimist, and hopefully this will ramp up. Thanks very much, Ethna, for that. Michael in Montreal, comment ça va? You there, Michael?
Merci, thank you.
Yeah, great to see you.
Yeah, and hello, Minister, and welcome. It's a pleasure to meet you. I won't stay long. I'll just give you a quick overview of what's happening in Quebec, which in the early days, and indeed until recently, was a hotspot for the virus, especially in Montreal. We still have a curfew, but it's begun to turn around. And speaking of vaccines, the government has announced that as of tomorrow, they think it will be 65 and up. We've gone from 80 and up, and then 70 and up, and now 65 and up. But it's moving slowly, and they've extended the length of time between the first and the second shot so that more people can be covered initially. In terms of the Irish community, it's a different community than some of the others you've been hearing about. It's what I call a settled community. And therefore, in terms of looking after the members, there are established charitable associations, and they all obviously continue with their work or ramped up their work to help the seniors. We did in Montreal lose about a dozen senior members of the Irish community, stalwarts of many, many years. So that was a big psychological blow, most of them to the virus. But the younger people, the more recent immigrants, people who'd been involved with the Chamber of Commerce and the GEA, they responded and, as it were, marshaled their efforts and helped out each other. And so the Irish community is doing quite well here. The city in general in Montreal has been very badly hit. As you mentioned, Minister, about the absence of students, Montreal has 4 major universities with about 200,000 students, and they've been in lockdown for the whole time. looking to the fall in terms of that, the government is still talking and the universities are talking about what they call a blended model. That is not everybody able to return, some still on virtual classes. But like everything else, that's still up in the air. And also, as Ethna said, the government here hopes to have everybody vaccinated by about the end of June. Meanwhile, with St. Patrick's Day around the corner, the St. Patrick's Society in Montreal is not completely daunted, and we're having a virtual luncheon with Ambassador McKee as the highlight as a speaker. And so that will be an unusual experience, and Irish themed food is deliverable to people's houses if they wish. So that's a positive sign. We obviously hope that's going to be a once-off. And even just this week, aside from the increased number of vaccines, the weather has started to increase. The temperature's gone up. So we're much more positive, and we feel the same about the extensive rollout of the vaccine. So things are becoming much more positive. So thank you, and it's lovely to meet you again.
Thank you. And I thought now, one of the interesting things I thought you mentioned there in terms of students, because I think it's a very similar situation to what we're experiencing. And with my own wife being a lecturer, it's going to be really interesting to see how the university sector comes out of the post-COVID world, because there seems to be, and the implications, I think, of this go way beyond the actual institution itself, because they go into communities and areas where accommodation and where businesses and everything relied on the presence of students. And I think the blended model of learning, which was probably something that would have evolved in terms of college and university life anyway, has really been accelerated, going back to that point I was making earlier of maybe the guts of a decade being condensed to a year. And I think that's going to have a really interesting effect in the knock-on of how student life works and is perceived, and how cities that have a very strong interconnection with their universities and with the vibrancy of certain parts of the whole city dependent on those students and what they bring to it. So I think right around the world, and it's interesting that you highlighted it there, we're going to see that. I can see implications of that in Dublin, and I'm hearing you know, from people talking about the implications in Galway as well of, you know, will we ever have the same type of traditional college setup that we had until effectively 2019. So I think that'll be interesting for those universities to map and hopefully work together on, regardless of where they are geographically located. And obviously it's just that hope, like we all have, that we can get back to, by the time we get into the September-October period, some type of normality again, where numbers can begin to congregate and come together. The whole of St. Patrick's Day is going to be virtual, I think, around the world this year. It's going to be very strange and very different. It's amazing. Some places last year, by deed of holding it a day or two early, were lucky enough to actually get a St. Patrick's Day event through. But this year, without fail, I think all of us will be in the virtual world. And there will be, and it's worth highlighting to, I think, the diaspora community, there will be a lot of virtual stuff being done out of Ireland in terms of the traditional Dublin St. Patrick's Day parade and other cultural events, which will be put up on platforms for streaming and will be available on the website, theireland.ie, and they will give people an opportunity, probably one of the positives, to engage and look in on that in a way that wasn't there in previous years. So the ambassador will probably have more on that anyway as we get into the type of week of Patrick's. But yeah, I'll hand back actually to you, Eamon.
Yeah, thanks, Minister. No, indeed. I mean, who would have thought that St. Patrick's Day was going to be a barometer of world health and welfare? But there we go. You know, hopefully by next year, you know, we'll be back to normal. You know, I'd like to call on duty now in Edmonton. Of course, Edmonton, economic powerhouse in Alberta, the province itself, very attractive, a lot of Irish immigrants. Judy, you've been very committed to not just Irish immigrant welfare, community welfare, but also culture. So on both fronts, very heavy impact from COVID. So over to you, Judy.
Wonderful. Hello, Minister. I don't know.
We hear you loud and clear.
Yep. Hello, Minister Brophy. It's wonderful to be with you this morning. Now, my job here has been very easy. I have been very lucky to be in Council of Ireland. I want to tell you about some of the events that are taking place, which are virtual, and COVID-19 has been restrictive to all. It is disabled. They've been given the vaccines, which have been rolling out, which have been good. And the kids are back at school, which is great. And it's going fairly well here, quite honest. And it's great to see you, Minister. I don't think you would be here otherwise, so it's welcome to Alberta. But the oil is not doing too well here as it used to. So the economy is not great. But the Irish, a lot of Irish here are working. They're very comfortable. I've had no problems, some of them at all. So it's great to be with you.
Thanks very much, Judy, and good to hear the news that the Irish are still employed and the economy is robust enough, which I know has been a great relief.
The Irish club are open 3 days a week. I haven't heard how they're doing, but they said there are fewer people attending, of course, due to the COVID. But we're really getting it under control. Most people have had their first dose here in Alberta. Now they're on the second one. So we're pleased with that. But of course there's still restrictions on the closures of the offices, like the hotels and that sort of thing. So it's not good.
And Judy, I think you've put your finger on an issue there that people from outside Canada often forget. The role of the provincial government. Every province is different. The experience of every province is different, whether it's in the impact of COVID or the scale of the vaccinations. So from what you say, Alberta is doing relatively okay, I suppose, because it hasn't hugely depended on some of the more exposed sectors.
That's true. That is very true.
It's a very positive thing to hear that, and just to pick up on the point you made as well, which I think is one of the most important things, and we have prioritized it here, and I think it's something we have to be conscious of, is getting children back into education and getting them back into being able to attend school and have that school experience, particularly as COVID has now turned into something that is well in excess of a year. When you think of the length of time which a child spends in education, having that deprived of them is something that really would have huge impact. So it's certainly, I think, welcome to see governments everywhere working to try and ensure that as a first stage in reopening or adjusting, that they try and facilitate getting the children back. Certainly the indications we have from the research here is that it is not as much, if any, of the worry and risks of spreading COVID by children going back to school. I think the latest figures I heard just from the first week of Irish children being back in their school classrooms is there wasn't a single case reported as having originated out of the school system. It's only a partially reopening of the school system here, but that is a very encouraging thing. And I think it's vital that we get children back into their education.
Thanks, Minister. Thanks very much, Judy. We'll move on. So I think Calgary is next. Deirdre, are you there? Deirdre Halford. Calgary, how are you, Deirdre?
I'm great. Thank you very much, Ambassador, and very welcome, Minister Brophy. Really happy to see you, and I wish I was in Ireland. Would you like to trade? Trade places, it would be great. What we found when this all started, which actually on St. Patrick's Day last year, they did announce a public health emergency in Alberta, so a nice anniversary for St. Patrick's Day, unfortunately. So what we first found was that people felt like, oh, we're going to be able to handle this. Took, you know, as you say, everybody could handle 3, 4, 6 months, maybe, you know, and they kept tempting us with another month. Oh, just wait another month, and we handled it okay. And, you know, in Red Deer, they found that they weren't handling it. And I know that the community there did reach out to the government in Ireland, and thankfully they got a really nice bit of funding to help out the people in Red Deer. And there are probably more services in Calgary, so they didn't need it as much. But as is happening in Montreal, you know, we do have a fairly established community of Irish older people that seem to be well taken care of with families and extended families and charities that exist already. But then, of course, there was the huge amount of young people that came in the last 10, 12 years. Everything that everybody else has said is very comparable to here. But one thing that I have found is the amount of young people that they're at that age where they're having children and they really desperately wanted their mothers or fathers to come out and be with them. And so there was lots and lots of questions about, you know, will they get the vaccine when they come here to stay with me? Will that apply? And of course, that's a Canadian question, or specifically a provincial question. And then we also had people who were passing away in Ireland and they were going home for funerals. Will we have to isolate when we go home? Can we not go to the, you know, our funerals? All of those questions, which I couldn't really answer because you can't just say refer to the websites that speak to COVID, because it's such an emotional thing for them. So you had to give them time to help them work through that. But, you know, I do think that there is coming a time when we might need some more funding in Calgary as time goes on, because, you know, our economy, as Dudi said, was very much in the slump before even COVID started. So there are so many young Irish that are involved in the construction trades, and they're doing very well. And real estate and construction is one of the industries, like technology, that has done so well. But there are many others who are in the services, and their spouses might be doing okay, but wives are at home. You know, I say that the caregiver is at home, either the wife or the husband is at home, and they're the ones that are starting to feel really isolated. And there's been quite a few marriage breakups as well. So, you know, all of that's starting to take toll. But there is optimism, of course, because I think I'm the youngest of 9 children. I'm going to be probably vaccinated before any of them, because they've now opened up the 50 to 64 with the AstraZeneca, the Oxford AstraZeneca, or as I call it, the Oxford Astronomical. So they are, you know, they're doing a good job of the rollout of the vaccine. So hopefully that creates some optimism, you know.
Well, you've concluded there with a very interesting piece of information, which I'd be, you know, to help with that idea of swapping places, because having tipped over into the 50s, I would therefore qualify, whereas I don't think under our regime here, I'm going to qualify for a vaccine for a long, long time to go. As a matter of fact, I reckon when it comes to politicians that we will be somewhere really in the last, you know, 166 vaccines left over on the shelf. Yeah, we'll tell you what, we'll give them to the politicians. But just in terms of, would you believe, not only not being able to swap places with you, but we have a 5-kilometer radius travel limit here. So you can go 5 kilometers from your home, and people are getting excited and thrilled and bubbling over with excitement at the notion that this might go up to 10 kilometers on the 5th of April. Now, it just shows you, I think it's those little things that just show you how life has changed. You know, if you had said to somebody, you know, as you say, 17th of March was the day, St. Patrick's Day, that they declared the emergency there. If you had said to somebody a year ago on St. Patrick's Day, do you know that you will have to be within 5 kilometers of your home and you may be given permission in April to go 10 kilometers, they would have looked at you and thought, this person is for the birds, this person is mad. And yet that's the life we now, and thankfully, because it's been very beneficial for communities, we have accepted it, and there's been huge buy-in, and people have changed their behavior in huge, huge ways. On the serious side, you know, you make a point around funerals, which I think is really interesting because it is such an emotive issue for Irish people, and for Irish people, particularly in the diaspora, who want to come back to Ireland for a funeral. And even though for families here, it's a very much an integral part of Irishness in the way in which we handle bereavement and the way in which we handle the coming together around funerals. And the impact of the restrictions on COVID on that have been very severe, and will continue to be in terms of for a number of countries which are going to be on our restricted list. You're going to have situations where if people come back from those countries to try and attend a funeral, they will not be able to. There just will be no facility. You will have to quarantine for 2 weeks in a hotel if the country you're coming from is on that list. And, you know, I have already got into my office people who are absolutely, you know, terrified of that because they have a mother or a father who's in very poor health. They're expecting the worst in terms of bad news, and now they seem to be being told, they are being told, that come probably by the start of next week, that if you're coming from the Middle East or if you're coming from South America, that you won't be able to come home for a funeral. And that's, you know, that really is a big change in terms of things, and it just shows you how much things have changed. But hopefully we will get to a better position. And as you know, there is that continued support and commitment from ourselves and from the embassy to work on the supports needed to help with what's happening, and particularly to deal with issues affecting people in terms of COVID. So we'll continue to engage with you on that. But thank you very much for talking about that today.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you, Deirdre, to remind us that a lot of people can be resilient but also vulnerable. So we have to be very mindful of that, and also the fact that we don't have travel. You know, that cuts people off. So I think that when travel resumes, I think it's going to be a big relief to people to get home and to have the back and forth that is very much part of life for Irish in Canada. I think we pivot now just to look at some of the economic issues briefly. And we have Laureen with us, who's our Vice Honorary Consul down in Calgary. Laureen has been doing great economic diplomacy for us, and she's very heavily committed to that. We appreciate her work. And of course, Frank from Vancouver has been very active since the consulate opened on the economic agenda and looking at the opportunities there. So Frank, did you want to lead off there?
Thank you, Ambassador. And Laureen has asked for me to go first, Minister, so please bears that in mind. But it's great to see you again, Minister, if only virtually, and I really look forward to today. We'll have you here, please God, in Vancouver.
Looking forward to it, Frank. Really am.
So I just set this nice background to encourage you to come, in case you need any more encouragement.
It's super impressive, may I say. Really super impressive. I hope you're not going to tell me that when you push a button, it turns into the bedroom behind you. Sorry, I'm interrupting you.
I'm actually in the stairway, Minister, but there you go. Before I go further, I must really thank the Irish Abroad Unit and the Emigrant Support Programme for all the funding that's come through, and I would echo the comments made earlier. The support we've got from The Irish budget has been excellent, exemplary, whether it be for the Eamon McLaughlin and the ICANN Centre. Anything we've asked, any solid proposal that's been made has been supported, and that's really, really appreciated by the Irish community. So, British Columbia is one of the leading provincial economies in recent years. It's been going very well, and they had a very good, comparatively speaking, pandemic. We've had 8 months of consecutive job growth. Unemployment is now down to 8.7%, and the focus is really on the economic recovery. And the government's approach here, the provincial government's approach, is to build back better, to make it more resilient, to make it more sustainable, and to make it more inclusive. We also have a new dynamic in that there's a swivel away from China to a certain extent. And so there's far more openness to working to the EU, to looking at Ireland as an entry point. And last week, the consul here has played a leading role with the other EU consuls in working with the BC authorities to promote Europe as a new trade partner. And we had 3 BC ministers in on that call, and they stated that their first trade mission after the pandemic would be to Europe and be to the EU. So it is all very positive. The provincial health officer yesterday announced that people should start begin to planning for having all students on campus in September. And things are really beginning to take off. We have a clean tech virtual mission coming at the end of this month, and the planning is that it will be a real mission at the end of this year or next year. And the consulate continues to work with our partners, and we hope to have an education pathfinder appointed by Enterprise Ireland based in Vancouver that will concentrate on BC, but will also promote educational linkages between all of Canada and Ireland. So it's very much I would say cautious but positive approach here at the moment, and the Irish are doing relatively well. We have had 2 young Irish males who took their own lives last year, so I wouldn't like to give you the wrong impression. There are issues here which would reflect everything that's been said. So we are really appreciative of all the support that comes from Dublin, and we continue to work on. But I'll hand over to Lorraine now, perhaps, Minister, or do you want to?
Go ahead, Lorraine.
Thank you. Thanks, Frank. First of all, welcome, Minister. It's nice to virtually meet you, and a big hello, of course, to the Ambassador, Orla, Frank, John, Laura, and for all your help, Laura, in making this happen, as well as the Honorary Consuls across Canada. It's always great to see you, although I hope one day we can meet again in Ireland very soon. For now, it's nice to see your faces here. I'm just going to back up for a quick minute. 2020 year for Alberta, for the ICCC and for myself here in Alberta. We were looking forward to really being able to focus on strengthening the existing trade relationships and expanding on them. But as we know, everything changed. All the events were canceled, but we wanted to, of course, keep up with our outreach. So one of the things that we did was in May of 2020, we conducted a COVID business impact survey. And then we had that the results presented by Todd Hirsch, who's a chief economist here in Alberta, virtually, of course, to members and to the network. And here's a couple of bits of information from that. The majority of respondents were Irish born with either Canadian citizenship or permanent residency in Canada. The respondents were in a range of sectors, with the most prevalent being construction, consulting, education, energy, finance, hospitality, real estate, and technology. While it was still early stages in May, and no one could, of course, see what was going to happen in the future, many of the business impacts expected did align with what has actually happened over the past year. So some key points of what they expected were that there would be a drop in revenues and deal flow, that there would be cancellations of meetings and events, that there would be layoffs, that there would be cancellations of contracts, and that there would be a decrease in demand of products and services. So that was a really interesting survey, and it's interesting to look back on it. When I went back into it the other day, I thought, oh, isn't that, you know, clearly the business folks had a sense of what was to come. Although I would echo what everyone else said, which is we did not know how long this would go on for and that we would still be here. I think what I would note as a business owner is that there have been many positives. We've had the opportunity to really create some, you know, unique approaches to issues of connecting with customers, of getting we have half of our business as retailers, whether they're national or local. And it's been extraordinary to watch how they have shifted and changed to succeed in this market or survive in this market. While we've seen many who have failed, and it's unfortunate without a doubt, it has been inspiring to see all the good stories come out of it. We also had the opportunity last year of introducing the ambassador to the business community here in Alberta. So thank you, Ambassador, very much for taking the time to do that with us. Now, as we move forward, you know, Deirdre did mention, we were in the midst of a recession that had started in 2014 here in Alberta, and 2020 was actually looking like it was on track to return us to modest growth here in Alberta. And of course that didn't happen, but we were looking forward to it with cautious optimism. The recent budget of the provincial government focuses on vaccinations, economic recovery, and a path to fiscal sustainability. Alberta's economy has been heavily dependent on the energy sector, and we have seen incredible success historically, not just financially, but also in the areas of innovation and the ability to be a global leader in developing resources in an environmentally responsible manner. However, we have focused now on diversification of the Alberta economy, and that really is a significant story that keeps going around. We need to create competitive and innovative business environment for companies. I think you're going to hear just in this quick little summary a few things that are quite similar between Ireland and Alberta. Albertans have a can-do attitude and a global perspective. We enjoy a high standard of living, and of course our landscape is gorgeous. Nothing like Ireland, but hopefully one day we can show it to you, Minister and Ambassador. Alberta has Canada's youngest and best educated workforce, which is combined with the most livable cities and the best business friendly policies in North America. There's a stable political system and a pro-business climate. Alberta had the second highest average annual GDP growth in Canada between 1999 and 2019 at 2.6%. We were tied with BC. Moving forward, the sectors of focus for Alberta are going to be, and again, you're going to see some synergies here, aerospace and logistics, agribusiness, petrochemicals, energy and clean technology, financial services, life sciences, and technology and data. The province has a strong focus on building and growing through diversification of markets. There are many synergies between our two countries that will allow us to grow bilateral trade. My focus for 2021 is going to be to identify and expand those opportunities for partnerships between Alberta and Irish businesses, to continue development of a strong network, to continue facilitating those connections, provide key insights and market information, identify trade opportunities, create and deliver events virtually for now that will further build awareness and understanding of the vast trade opportunities, and to further support the embassy and the Irish government agencies within this market. I think that we're going to come through 2021 with stronger ties and a foundation for further growth, and that it's really vital that we keep moving forward and capitalize on the appetite that we're seeing for new markets that are emerging within Alberta and Ireland. So thank you.
Thanks, Laureen. And Minister, if there's in future years, if there's a spike in the statistics of trade and investment between Ireland and specifically Alberta, you're looking at the reason why. Laureen's been doing terrific work on that score. I'm just very conscious of time, but I did want to get your sense.
No, you're okay for the moment. I have a little bit more because I'm finding it really interesting, and I just did want to come back in on what's been said there. I mean, I think it's really interesting listening to, you know, you could nearly take out, you know, and replace with Ireland. Some of the things that you were just saying there in terms of the synergies are so obvious, both in terms of the what's there in terms of young people, dynamism, wanting to do business, pro-business policies, stable economic government, etc., and then the desire in terms of the future growth plans and the diversification within the industry sector. So it does offer tremendous opportunities if you're taking up on Frank's point as well of if there is a shift to looking at Europe, I mean, we are now tremendously positioned as a gateway into the European Union, particularly for businesses that want, you know, a lot of that stability. They want maybe an English-speaking base. They want an opportunity to look at how they will develop not just a business within Ireland, but a business within Europe, and using Ireland as that bridge. And I really do think you can see that there is so many opportunities there. It's fascinating for me, by the way. One of the really interesting things that I've learned out of this conversation is, you know, you begin to get the scale and size of Canada, you know, but it is the diversity of the economic experience within different provinces is really quite striking, listening to collectively all of what you've been saying there. And in terms of the strength in some areas, you know, Frank's commentary is probably the most upbeat about any economy I've heard mentioned in the last 12 months. Unemployment figures really, really strong, and you know the positives there. And then obviously some of the earlier comments in terms of that real diversity. So it is something that, you know, you obviously have what we would refer to as regional disparities here, but just the scale and size of that and the different structures and ways of dealing with it, which obviously fully effectively autonomous regional governments bring into play when they're making decisions. You see it not just on the economic side, but you obviously, you know, from some of the contributions there, you could see it on the vaccine approach and rollout. But overall, it seemed to me that, you know, there were so many strengths in the opportunities for Canada. There are so many strengths in the opportunities for the Canadian-Irish relationship. We really have been incredibly lucky to have, I think, you're as an Honorary Consul team, and to have our embassy and consulate staff and people working in terms of, you know, building that relationship. And I think it's for me, this has been a really positive and uplifting opportunity to hear the stories today.
Thanks, Minister. Yeah, I mean, there are economists who think that we're going to see the roaring 20s back as the 2020s, you know, and I think we touched on that last week, Laureen, this idea that the companies that are ready for the surge in demand are going to really benefit. The ones that have pivoted towards kind of digital technology, digital supply lines, resilient supply lines, you know. But yeah, I think that there are huge opportunities for investment and trade in both ways. And I think driven by something which I think was reflected here today, which is the people-to-people contact. You know, it's actually, you know, it's the Irish people who've come into Canada, join the Irish organizations in Canada, join the chambers of commerce. That creates a real bridge, which I think is really important, and our honorary consuls have played a vital role in that. Just before we sign off, I know that, Minister, you wanted to say a special thank you to Doody, who is going to be leaving our ranks.
I did indeed, and thank you, Ambassador Doody. I gather after 21 years of Honorary Consul, you're heading towards retirement, and it's just to obviously thank you for all those years of service. You know, it's an amazing thing from what I've heard in terms of all the work you've done, that help you've given to so many young people as they transition from coming from Ireland to their new lives in Canada. And I know obviously that you would have dealt with many, many uplifting cases. I know you would have dealt with some obviously tough cases and some really experiences that would impact directly on you. But obviously you've done a tremendous job, and I have no doubt that you've, you know, not just been for the individuals, but for their families and everything, that you've obviously been a wonderful person to have dealing with those cases. So it's very kind of you, by the way, I gather, to say that you will remain on until a replacement is found for you. I don't think you probably could find a replacement for you, from what I hear. Maybe a successor, definitely not a replacement. So the guys tell me you'd be impossible to replace. So it really just on my behalf and the department's behalf to say, Gurmila Mangat, and you know, thank you very much for everything you've done.
Well done, Doody. Yeah, we're gonna miss you and all the contributions that you've made. before we sign off, I just wanted to do a final tour de table for all our honorary consuls. As you say goodbye to the minister, just is there one message you want to leave him with, or one final thought? And maybe we'll just do it in the same sequence, starting off going kind of east from west. So Mark, based on the discussion, or a thought you want to leave with the minister, over to you.
Yeah, first of all, thank you very much, Minister, for taking the time today. And we look forward to celebrating St. Patrick's Day, each in our own way, depending on where we are in terms of the pandemic. What I'd like to leave is we have unbelievably good relations between the two countries, and particularly Newfoundland and Labrador and Ireland. We were building and strengthening that based upon the direct link that we had between our two, Dublin and St. John's, and we've lost that due to the pandemic. And I'm longing for the day when I can jump on a plane and fly straight to Dublin and do business there.
Thank you, Mark. And by the way, my wife has got me watching this home renovation show called Rock Solid Builds, based in Newfoundland. And it's fantastic because you hear the Irish accents. The guy talks about the house, and I'm going out there. It's so funny, the Irish ingredients in Newfoundland Labrador. Can't wait to go see it. It looks fabulous. Brian, you're there?
Yes, and on behalf of Nova Scotia, I'd like to apologise to Mark for stealing that Dublin flight. We took the WestJet flight direct from Halifax to Dublin. Unfortunately, it was cancelled because of COVID as well. But I'd just like to maybe ask Minister Brophy if the absence of a Canadian ambassador to Ireland has been a hindrance to the economic and cultural relationship, or is that an issue at all?
Well, just to say, obviously, it's always great to have an ambassador, but I mean, I think the ties are very strong between Canada and Ireland, and between Ireland and Canada, and I know that that continues to work and build. So I'm sure that will be resolved, and we'll continue on the good work.
Yeah, and I think we'll get some news on that hopefully over the next while. I think we'll see something positive happen on that score. I think we had Ethna next. Ethna, are you still with us there? I can't see on screen. Ethna?
Hold on, let me unmute myself. Thank you, Eamon. I'm still here. Minister, as we speak, I understand one of our wonderful members of Parliament here for Lakeshore Toronto is having a second reading for his private members bill to designate the month of March as Irish Heritage Month here in Canada. So we're hoping that will happen today. And I think it's not just about St. Patrick's Day. I think it's to show the very strong ties between Canada and Ireland, and obviously the people who left Ireland and helped to build this great country. So I just throwing that out there as a matter of information. Thank you for all you do. And again, for our young people, I mean, Deirdre did mention about, we had one young couple who had applied for their permanent residency as a couple, and their relationship didn't survive the pandemic. So now they're back to applying singly again, and it's a lot of effort, it's a lot of work. So the Canadian government are making it much easier. They want to up the number of immigrants this year. So hopefully that will be a tremendous help to our young people as well. So Minister, thank you for your concern for them and for our seniors and for all of you. Lovely to see everybody again. And hopefully the next time we'll be in Ireland.
Thanks, Ethna. And indeed, James Maloney, our MP in Toronto, is putting forward the motion today to confirm it. And I think it is a great honor and a great platform to recognise March as Irish Heritage Month in Canada. It's a fantastic development. And Michael.
Let me just say very briefly again, Minister, as everybody has, to thank you for this. It's been wonderful, and it's also wonderful to see the other Consul Generals so that we do connect and know what's happening in the various parts of this huge country. A couple of things I would just pick up from what you said, and that is the idea of the online cultural platforms that are coming from Ireland have been hugely successful and important and meaningful for people here. So I think that whatever needs to be done in the interval while we're still in semi-lockdown to encourage and to support that would be wonderful. It is a kind of link that's very vital. And perhaps after the lockdown, then maybe there should be some effort to give extra support to those various cultural representatives to come to Canada to ignite and to revitalize the connections. And then finally, we're hoping, of course, that when the lockdown is over, that the flights from Montreal and other cities to Canada will resume and deal with what is indeed a very much pent-up demand for travel. Because as you've picked up, people can't wait to get back to Ireland, both tourists and family members. So a lot of new things, I think, around the corner, but things to be done in the interval as well. So thank you again for this. And it was great to see everybody again, and a pleasure to be connected with the new ambassador and to host this. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Mike. And you're absolutely right. Culture is huge. And I think the second gathering will happen spontaneously as soon as the planes are flying again. Absolutely right. Duty, are you still with us? Hello, Duty. I don't see her on screen. Okay.
She's on the screen, but she's mute.
Ah, Duty, can you unmute your microphone so we can say goodbye? I don't. No. We can.
She's working on it. Yeah, she's working on it.
Oh, she's working on it. Okay, good. Well, I said, while Duty works on that, Deirdre, you want to come in and we can cut back to Duty then?
There she is now.
Oh, she's there. Okay. Hi, Duty.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can now. Yes.
Okay, great. It was great to meet with the Minister Brophy, and I'm delighted. And thank you very much for those kind words. And we will try very hard to keep it up. The new, whoever will replace me, believe me, it'll be easy. It was easy for me. Whoever replaces me, I will give them all the information that I know and help them out. It was great to meet with the Minister, and thank you very much for being there, and hopefully we'll see you all in Ireland when this is over.
That's great, Duty. Thanks very much. Gurmal good.
Thank you very much. Great to be with you.
Good. Great. How do we, Deirdre, I think you're up next.
Right, Ambassador, thank you very much. And thank you very much, Minister. I would like to take this opportunity to thank Duty personally for all the support that she gave me when I first came on as Honorary Consul. I couldn't have done it without the quick phone calls to you to say help, and you were always very helpful. Thank you. And I would also really like to thank Siobhan Doran at the embassy, who has recently retired, who has been an amazing resource as a staffer in the embassy. So I just wanted to give a shout out to Siobhan from, I guess, all of us, to say thank you. She was unbelievable support. And finally, to answer your question, the one thing I would just like to really get some clarification on is, at what point is the passport office going to open again, and when can the backlog be resolved? Because it really ties into a lot of visa applications and permanent residence applications and all of that.
Right. Yeah, we'll keep you appraised of that, Deirdre. It's certainly on our mind, on our radar screen. Quick final thoughts from Frank and Laureen before the Minister says goodbye. I know he's under time pressure.
Thanks, Ambassador. Because Minister, Canada in general, I would say, has been, the relationship has been to a certain extent taken for granted, and there is huge potential, as we've heard from this morning, for trade and for greater collaboration in all areas. And I think it's very timely now. With the pandemic, there is a sea change in the way the world works, and I think it's very important, especially in Western Canada, which has been neglected even more so than other parts of Canada, that we engage strategically and meaningfully and quickly with Canada. The time is ripe. It is very opportune time, and my one message would be Canada is a great friend to Ireland. Perhaps we haven't always engaged with or taken it as seriously or put the resources into it that we could have done, but now is the time. Thank you.
Thanks, Frank. Laureen.
Well said, Frank. Thank you. I think my first would be thank you very much, Minister, Ambassador, and to everyone at the Embassy in Ottawa for your support. I also want to say thank you to Duty. I'm going to miss, hopefully we'll see you soon at a consular ball. I enjoyed those consular balls with you by my side many times, and I thank you for that time and wish you the best of luck. And to go back to what Frank said, you know, there are extraordinary opportunities that have come out of the pandemic. And one of them is the ability to strengthen the ties that we have between Ireland and Canada for companies and businesses to be positioning themselves now in a way that'll help them take advantage of that when the world starts opening up again and to move forward from there. So I think that there are nothing but positive things ahead. And I hope we will see you and welcome you here to Alberta one day very soon.
Thanks, Laureen. Minister, my own personal thanks for joining us for this conversation. I thought it was very rewarding and a great thing to do, and great to see you, Minister.
Well, listen, delighted to have had the conversation. Thank you all for your time. Thank you for organising it. My thanks again to everyone involved, be they all our honorary consuls there, and obviously the people in the embassies. You know, it's just, I'll take one tiny second to say, just to reassure, we are absolutely looking at and working on that passport issue and the passport office reopening. We are well aware of it, and whether it's in Canada or whether it's in Ireland, it's an issue that is popping up on a regular basis. So we hopefully will we'll be able to come back to you with an update on that. But listen, no, just my thanks. And to say basically a happy St. Patrick's Day for the 17th, and you know, and that with that great knowledge that hopefully you'll be able to enjoy the whole of March as a cultural occasion of Irish culture within Canada if that legislation passes. So I think that's a wonderful thing to have heard as well. So listen, thank you very much, and unfortunately I am right up against it now on time, so I will have to head. Okay.
Thanks, Minister. Great. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thanks very much.
See everybody. We'll always have a chance to raise a glass, whatever the conditions are, to St. Patrick's Day. So.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Happy St.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
St. Patrick's Day.
Flan.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.